Welcome to Real TMI, the podcast made for realtors by realtors. No sales fluff, no sugarcoating, just the tea on what really moves the market.
Jordan used to wear Genko jeans, Genso. What's up, 90s? What's going on, man?
Always, forever 90s.
Forever 90s. Bop. All right, man. So, what are we talking about? Where are we at?
So it's we get to follow up because
We do?
months ago,
Yes, I'm excited. We have a definition of something.
we wanted definitions, and today we got definitions, but that'll come later. So
That'll get,
it's exciting.
definitions will come later. So, we obviously know what we're going to talk about. What is it? What just happened? What do you want to tell the people?
So last week the U.S. Senate, they passed a bill that is housing related. It's the latest iteration of their big push in Congress to do something to try to help make housing more affordable. And so when that bill got passed last week, we saw a bunch of headlines, but the headlines give you just kind of like a brief overview, and I think it's worth really diving into the nuts and bolts to see what it really means with this legislation.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just dive into the nuts and bolts, right? Let's get to what it is that people want to know. Does this make a change? Like, does this actually help with housing supply? Is this giving the American people the relief valve that they need when it comes to buying, selling, building houses? Where are you at? Where do you want to start?
So, I mean, in my view, it's a large bill. I mean, 300 pages, a lot of it referencing other laws and tweaking them. So, I mean, it touches on a lot of different aspects of our housing industry. But a lot of it is just kind of tweaks, not a ton of big, grandiose ideas. It's more small ways for Congress to play with the margins to try to make things better. But first, I think we should just help our audience understand where we are in the process, because
Okay.
at this point, it still means nothing until we have a law. It's still just a bill. So taking it back to October, the Senate introduced a bill and they passed it. And that was the Road to Housing Act that the Senate passed back in October. The House comes along because you need to have, both the House and the Senate passing something together in order for it to be able to become law. The House, back in February, passed their own housing all-encompassed bill called the Housing for 21st Century Act. So you had these two different bills that were passed. The Senate then decided, okay, take the House's bill and try to then meld the two together in a way. Because I mean, there was some overlap between the two, but okay,
Right.
And so what they just passed last week, instead of the Road to Housing Act or the Housing for 21st Century Act, it's now called the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, because they love playing with the name.
Because that's how that happens.
Yes. But yeah, so the Senate has now passed it, and in my view, yeah, it's looking at what was passed in February and what the Senate just passed. There is a lot of overlap. According to Senator Warren from Massachusetts, she said it's like 85% the same. I think it's probably closer to like 60 to 70%. But I mean, there is a ton of overlap. There's a couple things that were added that were in neither of the original. But those were things that the president had requested that we had discussed on a previous episode. So now that the Senate has passed it, they're encouraging to just, pass what the Senate passed, and then we're all gravy. It'll go to the president's desk and he'll sign it. The House, though, has indicated they've put some brakes on that idea. They have raised some concerns and objections to what the Senate has passed. So we still don't know exactly, but we'll discuss later what the future looks like for this bill.
Okay. All right. So essentially the House is asking to be able to review the amendments that the Senate made, correct? And then the president actually has come out and said that the the version of this that the Senate put out, he supports, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
He is. And that's why, I mean, that's where you have Elizabeth Warren, very, liberal Democratic senator. She partnered up with Tim Scott from South Carolina, a Republican senator. So they were the ones that co-sponsored this bill. And then with the president's support behind it, it's like, okay, here's a great opportunity for bipartisan governance to actually occur in Washington, D.C. to result in some outcome that makes changes. But how big those changes are, that's where then we have to get into the weeds a bit to discuss, some examples from the bill as to what's in it. And then you and I can try to get a sense of, okay, if this thing actually becomes law, what do we think of these different little proposals? Will they have an impact on our industry and what we do?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's jump into what we've already talked about. How about that? Let's talk about the institutional investors, the definitions, all of that, because that is something we've talked about many times here. So, great place for round one. How do you feel?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
So,
Definition. All right.
and,
Sorry. Go
and
ahead, man.
And so, yeah, so this is one of the two things that was added to this iteration of the bill that wasn't in what was passed in October or February, because in February, the president came out and said that, he wants to see a ban on large institutional investors from being able to purchase more homes. And when he said that, we discussed it and we made it very clear, hey, definitions matter because, sounds great in theory, but until you actually know what it means, how it's defined, then, you can't evaluate it until then. So the definitions are out. A large institutional investor would be any entity, a for-profit entity that owns or controls or has, influence over directly or indirectly, more than 350 residential properties or more, single family homes or more.
Yeah.
So
And you and I thought that that was going to be a much, much higher number.
yeah.
350 seems low to call somebody an institutional investor, but I'm good with it. How about you?
Oh yeah, I have no qualms with that. And the way it's written, my reading of it, again, not a lawyer, but when I look at the bill, it's like, okay, yeah, they I had certain concerns like, oh, well, you have this umbrella company and they just, create a new LLC for every single
Right.
home. But that's where the way it's defined, that umbrella company has either direct or indirect ownership of all those LLCs. And so, yeah, it closes that potential loophole, thankfully. So yeah, I mean, I think they did a good job in acknowledging how people would try to skirt around it. But yeah, so basically any individual entity that underneath it in some form or fashion has 350 homes, this law would prohibit them from buying another property.
So the loophole that I had an issue with was the fact that I didn't believe that institutional investors were doing this that much anymore. They're doing a lot of build to rent kind of situations.
So
And
yeah,
I found that to be a loophole, right? Like, well, just continue to do that. You've already moved on from competing with mom and pops. You're now doing build to rents. There were rehab loopholes, all of those things. That seems to have gotten closed. Do you know anything about how that loophole got
well,
closed?
so it's an exception in the law
Right.
where yes, if a institutional investor, they have 350 plus single family residents, they can continue to build rentals, but the law would change it where they are then required within 7 years to sell the homes. So it's only a short term rental ownership, ownership for them as it's a rental.
Yep.
But then, yeah, it's putting a timeline in place that they can't in perpetuity continue to own them.
Which to me closes that loophole because renting
Yeah.
something out as an investor for 7 years, like it's not the greatest return on investment. You need those long term renters in there for this to even be worth your while because all of a sudden now you're almost guaranteeing that after 7 years you have to do a remodel on these properties because 7 years of ownership is not new.
Yeah.
Right. And if you want to get top dollar, you got to fix all the damages and just normal wear and tear that's going to happen over 7 years to be able to get that money back. I like it. I when I saw the 7 year, like closing that down, it's like, yeah, you can still build, you can still do this, but the perpetuity of rental goes away. And I kind of applauded that one. That to
Yeah.
me, in my world that I live in, had the most effect on everything that I saw here. Like I saw, I reading through it. I know you've studied it a lot more than me, but read through what I had time to read through. I was like, oh, these are little things. This one feels different. So I like this one a lot.
Yeah. And because, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, this is for single family homes. This is not
Hmm.
for multifamily apartment complexes. Those, the investors will still be able to develop apartments and have those be rentals in perpetuity. But if you're building out a neighborhood of single family homes, yeah, those you're not going to be able to hold on to forever. Um, and that I think is a good thing. It's because we're trying to get more supply out there for those individual home ownership.
Now, devil's advocacy, does this actually decrease the amount of single family homes being built, though,
Well,
and more apartments being built by these same people?
so it may, as you said, discourage them from building these subdivisions. But if those subdivisions would have otherwise only been forever rentals, I
What does it
mean, we're
matter?
we're trying to increase opportunity to home ownership, not home rentals necessarily. So
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I did see, I don't know what the averages are on this, that these investors were coming in after a builder had already started construction and then buying all the lots up, versus like doing the entire land development side of everything. Some of these were going to be single family homes and then just through some contract manipulation got turned into build to rents. That is what I had heard was happening with some of these. Again, these are some. Is that the whole picture? I'm not aware. But, to kind of go against my point that I just made, a lot of the ones I heard about going rental were going to be built anyway and then sold off. They just got bought up by a large, BlackRock type institution before they ever hit the market.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. I mean, this to me, and it's funny because it's one of those provisions that was not in the October bill or the February bill, but the president came out and said he wanted it in whatever housing legislation Congress puts on his desk. And so the Senate has complied and added it to the bill. And I think that this is a a benefit to making the bill more impactful in good ways. But again, though, the size of the impact, you're only dealing with a very small percentage of the buyer
right.
out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in one of our last podcasts, even this build to rent stuff, we were talking about a percentile of the market that was being sold off at that time.
Yeah. So yeah.
So, where do you go next? You read this whole thing, the whole thing. Where do you go next, man?
Well, so that was one of the two things that was not in the previous iterations. One of the other ones, though, this one totally unrelated to housing altogether. It's a temporary ban on central bank digital currencies,
That's
which
actually on my next note
yes,
because I saw that and I was like, okay, does this help at all? And
no.
where is this? Do you have an origin story for this? Where does your brain say?
My understanding is it comes from conservative circles and a distrust of the Fed and our monetary policy. And they like, I mean, there's those that are very much proponents of the gold standard and, hard cash. And I think so. This is basically just trying to put up barriers to moving, uh, towards the cashless society that we've been drifting towards. This is trying to, add some brakes to it. Ironically, though, this is one of the reasons that Republicans in the House have said they're not comfortable signing what the Senate has passed in its entirety because it's only a temporary ban and they want it a forever ban. So taking it through 2030
Wait,
is not enough. They want to, forever prohibit a digital currency being minted by, the treasury or whatever.
So wait a minute. So let me get this straight. Something that is actually possibly going to help us with housing, though we're debating that currently. One of the main holdups actually has absolutely nothing to do with housing at all.
Welcome to Washington, D.C. and
Well, welcome to Washington, D.C.
how the sausage is made. It's,
Oh my gosh.
but because
I
this
love,
was included in order to get some very conservative members on board with it. And and it succeeded as far as the votes. It was 89 senators voted in favor of this last week. And so it's like, okay, to get 89 senators to vote for a big piece of legislation, not just like, renaming a post office, but something, that actually is trying to address a problem. That's not easy. So, yeah, they add sweeteners to get people to vote for it. And this is one of those.
yeah, turtles trying to cross the road kind of thing. All right. So,
But let's get into some details that are more housing related.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it. So, for you, you're looking at this. Let me put it in words that I'm thinking. Like, this is an attempt to use a scalpel, right?
Yes.
Does that feel right to you?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
because there's nothing in it that's a big sweeping change that the average American would notice in the
yeah.
housing market at all.
Okay, so but we're trying to correct this by a million, you trying to take an elephant down with 1,000 cuts kind of thing
Hmm.
versus just a shotgun, right?
Yeah.
So what's next on your list? Like you see this, you read this, what is something besides the, institutional investors that stands out that has a shot at being helpful?
Well, okay. So, you have different groups that it's trying to help.
Okay.
So, all right, FHA buyers,
Mm,
very small little scalpel thing. Um, if you're an FHA buyer and you're looking to buy like a duplex, something that is multifamily, uh, you know, so you can rent out half of it and live in the other half.
yeah.
It increases the cap on, the loan limits for that sort of financing. So again,
Okay.
because how many FHA buyers are really out there looking at multifamily, but it's in part because the loan caps, you get priced out of the market. You can't compete for that duplex or quad because you're
Well,
only get a mortgage for so much. So now
yeah,
it's
putting my
increasing that.
put my investor cap on, like it does open the door for those that usually couldn't play in the investment world to be able to play in the investment world, right? So, what is the current limit is like, four units, four doors
Yeah,
kind of thing. Right. So you live in one, you rent out the other three. It's not a model that a lot of people use, but you technically can get a first time home buyer's loan to buy a fourplex and live in one and rent out the other three. It's just, it just doesn't happen a lot
right,
because one, first time home buyers usually don't have the capital to get everything moving around, even with the lower down payment amounts. And two, those fourplexes don't. There's not a lot of them in our area, at least.
right.
And the last one is like investors are scooping those up. You're competing against cash in that arena. So
Yes.
by raising how much you can spend on it, do you just increase the cost of that stuff? Because then cash buyers just beat you out still anyway. That's that's
Again,
how I'd look
very
at it
tricky
as a real.
scalpel.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate it, you know, affecting very many
No.
transactions at all. But it's like, so that's the sort of stuff that's in here is just a lot of little things like that. Another one, VA buyers.
Mm,
So there's a lot of um, housing programs for veterans, and when it comes to assistance, it's income based. So what this bill would do is remove the veterans' disability income from their income pool, so that way then if their disability income would otherwise mean they make too much to qualify for the housing assistance, now that disability income won't count towards their income, so they can stay under the cap and be able to qualify for
gotcha.
assistance. So
And I
again,
like that. If you got
oh
injured
yeah,
fighting, yeah, for our country, you got a disability from being in the service, then like, come on, we shouldn't be penalizing you for that.
oh no, I mean, it's like, yeah, these things, they're no brainer. Like, there's no reason to
Right.
object to them. It's
They're
just a
just,
matter
do
of,
they move the needle?
yeah, are they really going to help that many Americans?
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, a lot of what the bill tries to do is like with grants. So giving grants to local municipalities, where I mean, yeah, and it comes from the concept of, okay, our local governments can be the laboratories to experiment with different things, and so so the one it's grants to um, assist with strategies to support affordable housing, and it's like, okay, well, it's
Wait a
basically,
minute.
yes, we're giving
Yeah.
money to a local municipality if they can come up with stuff to improve affordable housing
Yeah.
that, you know,
So at the federal level, we can't figure this out. So maybe there's somebody much smarter than us at some other local level that wants to experiment with these things, which you do have a little more leeway to experiment at the local level because it's local municipalities and zonings and all of that stuff that
yeah,
actually get in the way of a lot of these developments. The federal government can say all they want to say, but if a zoning doesn't allow for it, then it just doesn't happen.
right.
So it's funny because it's like, hey, we couldn't figure this out, so we're going to send it down to you. And if you do a good job, we'll give you a grant for it. It makes a little bit of sense because they are the ones that can do the little bit of tweaking and the changes and everything to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Jordan, we've got the grants to the local municipalities, we've got the veterans. What's next? What should we pay attention to in this bill?
So, all right, one that has gotten a lot of coverage. Like, if you read the articles about it, they'll often ask or often mention how the bill would lower regulations and the red tape to
Mm,
be able to make it easier for building. And yeah, where the bill does that is with its exempts new construction and a lot of residential construction projects from the environmental review process. And so something that would normally you'd have to go through these additional hurdles and get it just a review for environmental impact. Now, if this bill becomes law, yeah, those single family houses that are getting built, they can become much more easily exempt from having to pass that or overcome that hurdle. So, you know, that affects the supply side of things, which can be beneficial. How
yeah.
impactful it is, I don't know.
Well, how impactful is it on both ends, right? Like, so you got what? So I don't understand this one as much as you do. I think is this an EPA limitation? Like, what is?
Yeah, the NEPA is the organization that does it.
Okay,
Um, and and so and that's where I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, every environmental regulation was put in place for a
right.
reason as far as, okay, environmental impact of anything that you or I or anybody does, as it affects others, that's an externality. And so, government steps in to regulate it in order for us to minimize our impact on each other through those environmental, pollution or whatever harms that may occur. Um, and so the exemptions here are not, at least my reading of it, it still would require the environmental review process for like, wholesale developments. But if it's just you have a vacant lot and you just want to put a house on it, then it's removing some of the red tape for that.
Okay,
Or
so
if you have an existing home and you're doing a renovation, so something that's just a rundown house and you want to put some money into it and spruce it up, what would under the status quo potentially have to get the environmental review done with this bill, it'd become exempt.
okay, okay, but that again, I think that doesn't do much because you just said that for subdivisions you have to still go through the whole process. But for a single house being remodeled on a piece of property or added to a single lot, it might be exempt there, which doesn't um that doesn't really change much.
Right. Well, and I'm not 100% when it comes to, what is the threshold
Okay.
for, when the exemption applies versus not. Like maybe subdivisions could still now get the exemption. I don't know exactly. Uh that was one that I read about, but I didn't get, all the finer
Yeah,
details
no,
on.
that makes sense.
Um
It concerns me because, I feel like we've rolled a lot of EPA type stuff back, and I don't I don't want to continue to destroy this one beautiful planet that we actually have. All right.
and so and it's like, and what is the actual benefit? Like, I mean, if the homes were going to get built either way, but the environmental review process was to, ensure that, no extra harms are befalling, the community. Um, if 99% of the time, it that project would have passed with flying colors, but 1% of the time, oh, okay, it doesn't pass the review. Yeah, that 1% now, if it, occurs in the future and doesn't have to be reviewed, okay, yeah, 1% then is causing those harms.
Right,
But then the 99%, they just have that one fewer hurdle to being built.
right.
And so then, is that enough to then make it where people are more likely to do these home renovation, large scale projects because they were otherwise scared of the environmental review that they would be having to do.
Interesting.
Hmm.
What else you got in here, man? Like, I see something about manufactured homes and permanent affixed chassis. Like, what are we talking
Yeah,
about when it comes to that?
this is the one that I'm most intrigued by
Oh,
as to, because I'm trying to predict what it will mean. So currently you have modular homes and manufactured homes. And there's a difference between the two. They're both built in indoor facilities and then transported to a property. But a manufactured home used to be known as a mobile home, had a has a permanent chassis underneath it uh, that you can attach wheels to and all that stuff. But, so if you go to a manufactured home community, they all have this steel frame underneath. And then they're propped up on pillars or blocks or whatever, and typically the wheels are removed. But those are manufactured homes, and those are viewed as vehicles rather than real property.
mm-hmm.
You can get then, an affidavit of a fixture and all that to attach it to the land. But um, the difference really is that then those are built to HUD standards, whereas modular homes built in a facility and transported to the property and then just affixed to the property and compiled to be the same as a stick-built home,
Right.
they have to abide by the local and state building codes. So they're built to a better quality. So you have, modular and manufactured, where the difference is not just the steel frame underneath on a manufactured home. This removes that steel frame requirement. So then it's like, okay, are we then more likely to see these modular type homes placed in manufactured home communities? Um, or are you just instead going to see modular home construction kind of then some of them shift to building manufactured homes where it's without needing the steel structure underneath, they're just now getting to build to a lower quality of building code um, to make the final
Yeah,
product.
I mean, the
I,
thing I could see happening then is that I mean, this is the hope is that you see modular style construction built on a chassis just for easier transportation and cheaper install. Like, because one of the massive costs about modular construction is transportation. And if I can build this entire house on top of a chassis that then just goes with the property, it's an easier construction. It's an easier transport, it's set up easier that way. But it's kind of like, okay, you can go either direction. Like modular quality on a chassis is fine, but like HUD quality on just your normal type property being dropped on there with a chassis and removing all that doesn't sound great.
So in my view, yeah, my reading of this though will not result in the low quality, lower quality, the HUD standards being used to create real property homes. It still will only be for manufactured home. All it's doing is making it where they don't need to have that steel chassis underneath. So they'll still be built to the same lower quality, still be considered a vehicle. And that's the strange thing to me is that, okay, they're placed on this property. They're not considered real property. They're considered personal property as a vehicle, but you can't really remove that later. You know, in theory right now, yeah, if you owned a home in a manufactured home community, you can put wheels on your thing and drive it to another neighborhood. Um, it'd be much more difficult to do without the steel chassis underneath. So it's a strange way to still view them as vehicles rather than houses.
Wait.
Um,
Okay, so now, yeah, I do see why you find this interesting, because now the question I have is probably the one you had. So what you're saying is that you could build at a HUD standard on a manufactured home, call it a manufactured home, but it's not on a chassis.
right. Yes. And
How?
so all of
But
those,
there's limits on like loans on that, and all of that are just so difficult to get a hold of.
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
There's
yeah, because I
something
mean,
there. There's
yeah,
something
to
weird.
get a,
There's somebody benefiting on that one that we're not thinking about.
I mean, yeah, I don't know who the lobbyists are that were pushing for this. I mean, and so,
I have a weird
because, all
thought.
right,
I
do
have
you
a weird thought.
know the average cost of a manufactured home?
Do I know it? No, not off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
So I think it was like, 125,000
Okay.
is what it costs to get a brand new manufactured home for the average, I think double wide. Um, but it's like, okay, is this going to make that then more affordable where, it's not 125, so it's going to decrease the average cost of a new manufactured home? And then make that then a more affordable option? I mean, like I could see that as having a good impact. Um, Me personally, I have my own biases against purchasing a manufactured home and placing it in a community where you have a lot rent that you then become, they have a monopoly and
Yeah,
can
I have
jack
a
up your
thought. I have a
rent.
thought that's percolating that I want to get to when you're done.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, and have at it because
Well,
yeah.
if I was a guest to lobbyist, okay, so I watched a documentary about mobile homes and how like you put these trailers on these lots that you don't own, and then all of a sudden you're paying for the trailer and you're paying for the lot rent. Well, a great way to repossess the whole thing is to increase the lot rent. Say you sign a 1-year lease, what's stopping me from increasing the lot rent on year 2? If you don't pay it, I repossess everything on that lot. Well, if you can't afford it, you probably can't afford the cost of breaking your mobile home down, moving it to another park. And so then I get to repossess the entire thing, which I've seen it. My family grew up super poor. I had lots of this kind of went down back in the day. All right. Now, if I was to guess, you're now not even including a chassis. There's no way for you to even take that. Like, rent this piece of property. I'll raise the lot rent on you later. Whatever's attached to it comes with it. Oh, you don't have a chassis? You can't take that with you? Too bad.
Yeah. That's exactly my just, skeptical
Right.
or cynical reading of it is
Any,
it will cause a future problem of it's creating a more captive market
That's what it
for
is.
these manufactured
Right.
home community owners, the people that own the lots. Now it's already difficult as it is to, okay, if the rent gets jacked up for the people to leave, now it's even more difficult for them to do so.
Yeah,
But it's cheaper up front. I
my
don't know.
struggle with all this stuff is that crap always rolls downhill, right? And it's always the poorest of us that get taken the most advantage of. We're the ones with the worst diets. We're the ones that don't have fresh fruit or milk in the food pantries that are given away. Like, you go to inner city Detroit, you're not going to find a produce section at the Family Dollar, right? This is the
Right.
problem that poverty deals with. And this is the kind of crap that nobody pays attention to because it's not their family that they're talking about. So it gets pushed through in these massive bills. And I mean, somebody sitting up on Capitol Hill, not to say all of them are like this, but how many of you have family that's had a trailer or mobile home repossessed and you couldn't take it even though you already paid for it, but now you can't afford the lot rent? Like, this is the kind of crap that it really just starts screwing over those that are less fortunate and didn't grow up with generational wealth, and like they finally have something they can call their own, but wait, not really, because the lot's not yours. I i really hope that's not what this
And
is, but man, I don't trust it not
well,
to be.
and it's one of those things where as housing has become more unaffordable for first time home buyers, then the demand for manufactured housing has gone up because that is the most affordable
Right.
option out there in some regards. If you're trying to have ownership of something rather than just renting, but then you still rent the land underneath quite often. And so for our agents, because we're brokers that have agents who want to be able to help clients with these transactions as well, it's like, okay, we need to educate ourselves to become more familiar then with, okay, what are the changes that are occurring even in these manufactured communities where we used to not play a role in. Agents are becoming a bigger share of the transactions. We're becoming part of those transactions
Right.
in greater frequency.
I'm gonna go off on a little tangent. The writing on the wall for me is that, all of us realtors, we see the house prices go up. People still need housing, so we're introducing mobile homes as an option. We're currently, as a brokerage, getting licensed to sell mobile homes. And the sad part about it is while we're not increasing the pay of the average American, we are decreasing the quality of the housing that they live in, and we now are giving them, oh, look, here's another option. Yeah, that option comes with HUD standards, which are much, much less than general construction standards. And
Yeah.
here, let's put you into these situations where you can own your mobile home, but this tiny little 40 by 100 foot, if that, lot that isn't worth what you're going to pay 2 years of rent for is you're going to be stuck paying that forever because that's just how this works. I
Yeah.
it's a sad state where it shows the need that we have to fix the housing crisis, the unaffordability crisis, because where we're naturally going is just lowering the bar. That's where we're ending up, is we're fixing it by lowering the bar. Have you ever tried to replace a furnace in a mobile home? Have you ever seen the quality and efficiency of these things? They are absolutely atrocious. Like, I just, okay,
And
great. But then let's raise
because
the HUD standards too.
right. Well, no, and that's exactly because I mean, we've been like, I've been out on showings, and oh yeah, okay, you know what? Yeah, this is a manufactured home with, that comes with the lot and all that, and so it's listed and it's affordable. But you walk in and you can tell, yeah, the walls are like 4 inches,
Yeah.
not 6 inches, and it's like, oh yeah, you can instantly feel that you are not in a to local code built home. Whereas modular homes, yeah, I mean, you walk in and you may be able to tell, okay, yeah, this was put together in pieces, but otherwise the quality is just as good and there's nothing bad about modular built home. In some ways there's upsides to it because it was manufactured in a uh, controlled environmental,
Right.
indoor
Right. It
facility.
didn't get
So
rained on while the framing was going up, that kind of thing.
right.
Yeah. Well, that was a little bit of a tangent. That one
No, yeah,
I
and so
wasn't
I mean,
expecting to go down that road.
no, but and that to me was one of the more notable, maybe just because it struck me, the way it did. But that's one of the more notable pieces. There's nothing else in this bill that I'm seeing that is anything more than these scalpels. There's more examples of scalpels, but it's like I mean, there's been a lot of headlines. It's meant to generate a lot of goodwill because when Washington can do anything that is in a bipartisan nature, that is viewed positively and we should encourage it. Um, but to me, if this is the moonshot, the one shot to do something big for housing, I'm not. I'm just maybe I don't see it. It's just a lot of little things that, okay, I'll put my hope in it that it works, but I don't intellectually understand how we get there.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I have an answer to.
Okay,
What do you feel like is missing?
so it does a little bit to address the supply side. Um, Not much. Um, so there's a lot more that could be done on the supply side. It does a little bit to address the financing side for those who have lower incomes. Because yeah, another one was, raising the maximum eligible incomes to qualify for low income housing programs.
Mm.
So yeah, capturing more people near the bottom to say, hey, there's government programs that already exist to benefit you and helping you get,
Did it raise
funding.
funding though? If there's a bigger pool of people, does it raise the funding?
I don't know.
Okay. Cool. Great.
Yeah. Um, but but it doesn't do anything major to help that typical 30-year-old
Right.
wannabe first-time home buyer. I don't see anything that is just really there that, okay, even if this passes and it takes a year to implement, let's say, at 2028, they are like, okay, well, I think I should be able to buy a house now because they passed that big housing bill out of, DC last year. I don't think they're going to see any difference. And so to me, I mean, I'm a fan for something that direct financial assistance
Hmm.
to those would be something that really is first time home buyer specific. That's what's missing. I don't see anything. Maybe I glanced over it, but I didn't see anything big for first time home buyers. And I don't know why not, because that is the thing that we should all recognize is the root of our housing problem, is that the first time home buyers that haven't bought, the would be first time home buyers, they're the ones who need the most assistance. Um, and everything has been trending in the wrong direction. And until they become homeowners themselves, they're not going to be building equity like the rest of us that have been fortunate enough to have purchased a house, 10 years ago, whatever it may be. Um, so, yeah, I, I, I'm disappointed. Having gone through the whole thing, I'm disappointed because I want there to be something bigger. But in Washington, D.C., you can only get to do as big as what you can get a coalition to agree to.
Yeah.
And so,
So first time mobile buyers, you're talking about something like down payment assistance for those
yeah,
that like I think that Detroit did something like generationally if you and your parents didn't own a home, there was like a 30 I could be speaking incorrectly here, but it's if you never owned a home and your parents never owned a home, things like giving you a $30,000 grant for down payment assistance, with no interest and that kind of thing. Um, was some of the stuff that I'd heard kind of thrown around, and I liked it because it to me it also comes from generational. Like you and I are in
Yes.
real estate, and we see first time home buyers that are in their 20s that are getting money given to them by their parents, but not everybody has that. And that is not that first time home buyer's fault or problem. They just don't have that silver spoon that the other person has. And so when I heard about those types of programs, I kind of liked it. Now, I heard a lot of people talk bad about it, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, like this is how you equal out a lot of things, you know? And then another thing that I liked is, and I don't see it used often, and this is some research I want to do to help my people with, is Section 8, which is one of the pools that you were talking about that pays for rents for low income. Um, Pivoting to not paying rents but paying mortgages. So, and everyone's like, well, why would we do that? Well, would you rather that money go to a landlord or actually go to building that person's wealth? Because that actually does more to pull people out of poverty than just paying a
Yeah,
landlord for them.
that would be huge.
Right. And I think that exists, but it's a difficult thing to get into, or it's just an education thing. People don't know about it. Or there's like, cool, we do this, but you have to get the house first, which is already difficult enough to do.
Well, and it's funny because there was something in the bill when I was reading, and it got to a section where, yeah, it was talking about Section 8 qualified um, Americans that uh, there was a pilot program, but it's only, if I read it right, it's only 25 people would get to participate in this pilot program.
Oh,
It's
man.
like 25 across the nation. That's not even one per state.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's so few. It's like, okay, I mean, hopefully if that pilot program then was successful and then expanded, but I mean, a pilot program for 25 people who are on Section 8, that's a minuscule scalpel, if anything.
Yeah, that doesn't. And what was it they were going to do with those 25 people?
So it's a $5,000 account. Like, I didn't get into the
Okay.
nitty gritty of it because it's like, okay, if it's only really applying to
But they
25
were going to try
people,
to help them get into home ownership, but it was like 25 people that it
yeah,
would affect.
save money, I think, to then be able to purchase. Um, yeah, so it had something to do with, I think, like if their income goes up and then their rent goes up, a portion of that difference goes into an interest bearing account. I don't know exactly, but
Gotcha. All right. The answer to the question I asked you for me,
yes,
what I would have wanted to see in this is twofold. You're spot on. It is first time home buyer assistance, like actually just fixing that. We can do that. Um, but the one that means a lot to me is the trades. Um, vocalities, vocational training for those to get into the trades. Because one of the issues I see with housing is the cost of housing is too expensive to build. The reason for that is simply there's just not enough skilled trades out there that know how to do these jobs. Well, we can encourage a generation to go into these trades that are paying a lot of money at the moment. Now, will they be always paying this amount of money? I would hope not, because it does seem astronomical on some of them. So, reducing down the cost of construction by increasing the workers in the field and supporting this vocational training at a federal level um, to reduce the cost of construction while also increasing the employability of a younger generation is something I was thinking would work well.
yeah, no, that's great on the supply side for that's so yeah. To me,
Yeah.
I think if you were to sit a group of wannabe homeowners in a room and ask them, hey, what would you want to see the government do to help make housing more affordable? That focus group could come up with several ideas that would have more impact than what's in these bills. But with all that said, I'm still in support of the bill. I still think like, hey,
Yeah.
it's a step in the right direction. It's a good thing for our Congress to be doing it, but it's just so small that it's disappointing that I don't have a ton of optimism that it will make much impact at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. After going through this with you, I agree. I think not
And
enough.
do you want to know the drama of politics and why this bill may never actually make it to the president's desk?
Yes, I do.
So you had the president himself and then a bunch of House Republicans who have said that, oh, even though this is a bipartisan thing and all that, they're not going to pass anything else in the House until the SAVE Act, a totally unrelated piece of legislation. Until that is passed, nothing else is getting passed. And so the SAVE Act, which will never overcome a filibuster. So unless they change the rules to, get it out of the Senate without Democratic support, then the SAVE Act isn't going to pass. And so then if the Republicans in the House, maintain their position that they refuse to support and, pass anything until the SAVE Act comes first, then yeah, this could end up dying, which would be truly sad. I mean, a sad reflection
Well,
of
right. I
the
think you
dysfunction.
said, what was it? Like 89 to
Yeah,
10 vote kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
it's obvious that this one could easily pass if everybody just got out of their own way and got one through. But now you're going to hold
Mhm.
this up too for something else. Cool. Sounds fun.
Yeah.
I am
Yes.
very glad I sell houses and
Yes.
not run for office. That would be terrible. Anyway, cool. We good? How you feeling?
Yeah. So yeah, it, it was fun to have the ability to reflect back on, hey, when the president said he wanted a ban on institutional investors, we got what we wanted. We got the definitions. We got the legislation to do it. Now we just get to see if it happens.
Now we get to see if it happens. Sweet. All right, man. Well,
All right. Well, thanks.
all right, brother. I'll talk
Take
to you
care.
later. Peace.